Kudash, 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 Adonai, Elohim, Sabayath, meaning holy, 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 Lord of hosts. Yad, He, Va, He, the four Hebrew syllables meaning divine masculine, divine feminine, divine masculine, and divine feminine as a collective whole, creating the tetragrammaton. As above, so below, the macro prosophis above and the micro prosophis below, because we are the microorganisms and the host of the Elohim. In the beginning, Elohim said, "Let us create them in our image to be a reflection and be a light to the rest of the world as spiritual lights." Exoterically, meaning externally Israelites, but esoterically spiritual lights. Shabbat, Shalom, peace and blessing. Shabbatai, as we learned in the lesson from a couple days ago, based on the importance of cycles, part 2 out of the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, we learned that the planetary name for Saturn is Shabbatai, and Saturn correlates with Saturday. Saturday, Shabbatai, Shabbat, Salah. Well, today we're going to go into revelations, the signs of the times, the esoteric meaning the spiritual, inward parts, intuitive thinking and believing as spirit, and the exoteric meaning external and to the physical world and the physical plane and the meaning of things. So today I want to start by talking about the tribulation period. That 7-year tribulation period in which the book of Revelation talks about and the events that correlate with it, And in that 7-year period, it talked about chain of events happening, In the book of Revelation, it talked about 7 seals being broken, 7 angels, and 7 vials of indignation, It also talks about the elect, In the Bible, exoterically, they're called the elect, which are, chosen seeds, which I call them, In the Bible, it says 12,000 out of each of the 12 tribes, which makes 144,000. And these are all Israelites because the 12 tribes are Israelites from the bloodline of Shem, which we also learned in the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. The name for the sun is Shemesh, and Shemesh correlates with light. That's why I say the children of Shem are spiritual lights, the spiritual beings, the reflection of the Most High God, that are created in the image, which have the God particle, as it says in the Psalms, "Ye are all God's children of the Most High." And by saying ye are all God's, because angels are considered part of God's creation and children of God as well. And they're called the B'nai Elohim, This says we are the spiritual lights, esoterically, but exoterically in the world, we are considered as Israelites, So in that 7-year period, it talks about this chain of events that are going to happen. And it talks about these 4 winds, 4 angels coming through the north portal, east portal, south portal, and west portal, 4 corners of the earth, because prophecy is taking place in all parts of the world. So something that's going on in one part, might not be going on in the other part, but something that's going on in another part, might be different from what's happening elsewhere, And this is how the Most High works. He works, everything doesn't happen overnight. What people know as apocalypse, as they see in movies, they just it looks like one big catastrophic day, like in the movie 2012. But that's not how it works. The Most High works periodically through cycles, a chain of events dispersed in different periods of time, all within a specific period, because every 7 years is a Jubilee cycle. So when I say these events emerging all within this period of this 7 year cycle, you know, and in the book of Matthew 24, he said you will hear of war. The Most High God said you will hear of wars, rumors of wars, nations rising against nations, famines, earthquakes in diverse places. Now let's break that down. Earthquakes in diverse places, exoterically, externally, physically, people will just say that it's just talking about plain earthquakes. But you know, esoterically, spiritually speaking, it's talking about a collective, because the Bible is written in parables, allegories, and figurative language, So when a person just tries to externally explain something with simplicity, that's what they'll look at it as. But earthquakes in diverse places, meaning earthquake weather in places it doesn't normally happen, meaning natural phenomenon or natural disasters in places where it wouldn't normally occur. Rumors of wars would be considered, back and forth as a collective of nations, like, oh, North Korea and America is going at it. Oh, we're going to put the sanctions on this country. If you don't stop your nuclear program, we're going to do this, this, and that. We're going to demonize you in front of the rest of the world. And, we're going to cut you off from the resources of everything else, because we're the head and you guys are the tail. But we're going to get into that in a minute in the book of Revelation. I can explain these things right now because I memorize them by heart, and I can break these scriptures down by heart because I memorize them, because they resonate with my spirit. And through consistencies and patterns and meditation, I can decipher these things. Decipher these things means decode. Decode and means to discern something. So rumors of wars, it's like the back and forth in the media amongst nations of the cause and effect of events. And rumors of wars and actual wars, like as you've seen, Russia invading Ukraine. You got China, on the brink of invading Taiwan, and then you see all these nations picking a side of who they're going to support and who they're not going to support, and then go back to the drawing board of threatening each other of, if you don't do this, we're going to do this. Rumors of wars and actual war. Nations rising against nations, picking sides. Famines is coming from global sanctions as well. Food being not being able to be dispersed on its natural routes, and daily routine as it once would before, due to sanctions and blockages and wars and rumors of wars, and the simple fact of nations picking sides of what they're going to let come through and what they're not going to let come through, due to putting the sanctions on the other ones. You get what I'm saying? And famines, that's why you're seeing a lot of, Ukraine and the area of Russia, they're one of the biggest wheat and grain producers in the nation at this point. Well, not say nation, because nation can be considered a country or a specific group of people, but I'm talking about the biggest grain and wheat producers in the world, on a global, trade scale, put it that way. And, you know, there's shortages of a lot of stuff, a lot of crops aren't growing on their natural cycles due to CMEs, which is coronal mass ejection, which comes from solar flares. And we're going to get to that as well. And you also have just shortages, period, because all of this genetic splicing with animals, meaning cloning and GMOs, genetically modified organisms, basically cutting the real supply out and duplicating it with artificial things, meaning things that are not real, like the salmon, the fish, uh, uh, last year, but still a couple months ago, but into last year of 2022, just right here in Pennsylvania alone, federal authorities, invaded, and raided, correlate together. I like saying things that correlate together. Raided a Amish, a Amish farm, a community where they supply over 4,000 people, of meats because they weren't putting enough chemicals and, other unnatural things in their products, in their production, and a lot of Amish people, they like to naturally produce things and make things of natural and untampered with ingredients. It's as messed up as it sounds, anything FDA approved, the Food and Drug Administration, anything FDA approved means it's been tampered with. You, as crazy and reverse as that sounds, anything un-FDA approved means it's more untampered with than actually tampered with. People think because something is FDA approved that it's much more safer, but things that are FDA approved are more tampered with because they follow the guidelines of this GMO process, artificial production, and genetic splicing, so basically fake organisms, we got let's go with that, you got that, and a lot of this stuff isn't real, so there's a lot of shortages with food and other things of that nature. So that's another thing that's causing the famines, Remember I told you about the CMEs and all of this stuff that's causing other things to occur. That is also having a cause and effect on a lot of things as well. So I had to close the door because, kids is coming in and they be real loud. So, that's having a cause and effect on, food production as well. So we also, now let's jump to the book of Revelation. It talks about the elect, the revival of the elect. So what the rapture means, like I've said in other videos, a rapture means an ascension. Ascension is coming from a lower state of consciousness, a state of ignorance, to a higher state of awareness, which I also call the Kundalini rising, with the guidance and intelligence of the Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit also meaning the Shekinah, Kundalini rising. So coming from a low state of ignorance to a higher state of awareness. That's what I call a rapture. And it talks about this rapture process all in the same time frame of the awakening of the elect. So it tells you about these two witnesses in the Bible, which we know as Enoch and Elijah. That's why I always talk about reincarnation, DNA memories, ancestral memories, coming back on a cycle, because it actually tells you that on multiple occasions throughout the Bible, just in a metaphor, allegory, and figurative language. What a lot of people don't like to follow the patterns of that because they stay into the narrative of religion, And that religion, it follows a narrative, You got to think about it. The Bible was canonized, They decided what they were going to add and what they were going to take away. when the Bible is clearly just a historical record of the Israelites' history. So their oppressors, the people that oppressed them, colonized the rest of the world, which took these holy scriptures and they decided to canonize them, meaning condense, information to fit a narrative. So they decided what they was going to add and what they was going to take away, just like it says in the book of Revelation, because the Most High foretold you that these things were going to happen. He said, anybody that adds to this book, I'm going to add to you the plagues in which I talked about in this book. Anybody that takes away from this book, I'm going to take away your portion from the book of life. Now back to this canonization, a lot of people say they don't go with the book of Enoch, the greater and lesser keys of Solomon. Put it this way and tell you this. Apocryphal, like the Apocrypha that was in the 1611 Bible, means hidden. Comes from the Greek word hidden, meaning hidden scriptures that were taken away, added and taken away. Remember that in the book of Revelation. And, for each character in the Bible, there is a book that gives you more in-depth detail that relates to those biblical stories. Just like Moses. In the book of Moses, there's a book called the 6th and 7th book of Moses. Also, the 8th and 9th book of Moses that breaks that story down in all of those events. Just like Abraham, there's the apocalypse of Abraham that also breaks down the 10 plagues of Abraham, that's basically telling you the plagues that will come in the 7-year cycle of the Great Tribulation period. Uh, Going to the Solomon. Solomon has plenty books of information talking about him. You have the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, the Odes of Solomon, the Psalms of Solomon. Even the 12 tribes of Israel. You have it's called the for each one of the sons of Jacob, which fought with an angel. In Hebrew, the name is Jacob. His name was changed to Israel. Had 12 sons, and the book on the Testament is called the Testament of the 12, meaning the 12 patriarchs. And all of those stories about like Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. It gives you an in-depth, more deeper understanding on the genealogy and the full story of the events that happened in the book of Jasher. Then you have Jubilees, which breaks down the Jubilee cycles that occur on these 7-year periods, and then all the way to the New Testament. There's so much other information out there. Let's put it that way, because of canonization and scriptures that were added and taken away to fit this specific group's narrative. The Most High made the Israelites the spiritual lights in His image to have the God particle to be a reflection to the rest of the world and teach the rest of the world. Not for the Gentiles to teach them and for them to be the head and them to be the tail. But it said that would happen in the curses of Deuteronomy, but that's what happened due to the law being broken, and the law being the galactic law of cause and effect and the do's and the don'ts. What would happen if you did this, and what would happen if you didn't do this, the blessings and the curses. But it also talks about the reversal of the curses in the end time. And basically, back to those two witnesses, it talks about them lying dead in the streets for 3.5 days as a metaphor, talking about a period of time that they would be at an ignorant state, a dead state, and they would need revival. So now this goes into that rapture period, from that low state of ignorance to that higher state of self-awareness through the spirit, because that's why in the book of Daniel, he told him to seal up these books into the end time, because you can't cast pearls in front of swine, because they pervert everything, and they use a lot of trickery, and just the same way they canonize stuff, to fit a narrative, the same thing that they do with everything else. That's why they tell you uh magic, which is really natural magneticism due to the laws of cause and effect. By you following those laws, statutes, and commandments, as above, so below, you being in tune with nature, Mother Nature, the elements of nature and the elemental spirits are connected to the cosmos, the celestial spirits, the celestial and below the terrestrial, which work together in duality and correlate, which causes the effect of these miracles to happen, which people call magic, which is really magneticism. It's like basically your energy, your essence, your ether, it's like a magnet, You get what you dish. It's a gravitational pull. So what you put out, is what you draw back in. So that's how that works, and that's how these things are able to transpire. But which these people, canonizers, colonizers, by them perverting everything, they have people, questioning their own spirituality and the things that are good and actually work for you. They got you thinking that they're bad. So it's a reversal. Just like people think Antichrist is just a Pacific person. It's not a Pacific person, and the Antichrist has been here, But just like some people call it Illuminati, Illuminati just comes from the word illuminated, and illuminated just means enlightened. They're secret keepers, but they're secret keepers in high and wicked places. So when I say Antichrist, an Antichrist is just anybody that's anti against God's laws, statutes, and commandments. And these are the people that tell you that God's laws are done away with, which the Messiah even told you in the New Testament. He said, I come not to do away with the law, I just come to fulfill it. The Messiah is the forerunner, to lay down the blueprint and the foundation, because he's telling you, I'm going to leave so I can send you the comforter, so you can be likewise like me, and you will work greater wonders than I have, So, this is the concept that people don't understand. Just like the Messiah, he was telling you, said, just like it says in the Psalm, ye are all God's children of the Most High. He consistently said over and over, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, because God is eternal. Messiah just means the anointed one. He was the anointed one that came out the Stargate, that was able to be blameless, to adopt these abilities and naturally have the law, statutes, and commandments already written on his heart. And when you have something on your heart is symbolic to consciousness. Consciousness comes from DNA memories that are encoded in you. So he was able to produce those conscious thoughts and turn them into actions and lead by example. That's why he was hated, and that's also why they crucified him. But he's telling you there will be, a rapture, ascension of a multitude all at one time in the latter time, and they will be likewise, and they will work greater wonders than he has. So think about that, how that correlates, and how people will twist those scriptures and take it out of context into something else. Now back to Antichrist. And Antichrist means, anti-Messiah like, So to tell you that the law is done away with, that means that you don't have to follow it. And if you don't follow it, you don't have the magneticism to gravitate to those things that are magical, which cause these miracles, because once you can gravitate to that things by following this law, statutes, and commandments of galactic law of cause and effect and do's and don't, you are able to achieve much more, because magneticism, magic, miracles, it all comes from your intent, how you reflect your intent on something. And that's why the law teaches you how to have righteous intent. Because when you have righteous intent, things will righteously work in your favor for balance, and you'll be protected. Strange salvation events will happen, just like it says in the wisdom of Solomon. I believe it's chapter 5, when he said, "In that day the righteous man shall stand in great boldness against the such that have afflicted him and had no accounts of his labor." So basically, when they see it, the Gentiles, the other nations, they should be in great fear and trouble at the strangeness of their salvation, so far beyond all they have looked for. Because externally, they're looking for it to be one way, the way that they presented it for the rest of the world to perceive in that manner. But in all actuality, it's a whole nother way. So to the people that believe in the religious ideology, it's going to be strange to them. And that's an apocrypha. The apocrypha, like I said before, means hidden, you know, and from further evaluation, they realize we got to take this out. This is giving too much detail, and it's actually talking about us and all the wickedness we committed. So that's what I mean by an antichrist. Antichrist means anti-God. Anti-God means everything that's against what God stands for in that spiritual book. And the key things that it talks about from the beginning to the end is law, statutes, and commandments. So that's where you get this antichrist from. And it tells you, they would lie dead in the street, meaning they would be spiritually dead, but they would come back to life. And to the amazement of all the people in this marketplace, which is talking about in a metaphor in the Bible, he said that they arose and stood on their feet. It told you by their awakening. It talks about the two olive branches, and it talks about two witnesses, but it's also referring to the nation of Israel, of the children of light, Shemash, as the son of the God particle, and those that would be able to achieve these things because what's naturally encoded in their DNA. To prove that, the Most High said, "I will write a new covenant on your heart," which we know in the New Testament, which churches and religious institutions repeat over and over without the real understanding of it. They'll give you an understanding, a low vibrational understanding of simplicity to it. So basically telling you, that these individuals, spiritual lights, they would rise from that low state to that higher state, being basically what a rapture is. And, they will become aware because this new covenant of law, statutes, and commandment in time is written on their heart and consciousness. So all the events of Matthew 24